Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. We are officially full speed ahead with college football, and with a week out to SEC Media Days, today feels like a good day to just do the hard pivot, okay? And a lot of you haven't heard me talk much football, if any football at all. But like I said, today feels like a great day. By the way, you could drop your college football, your college hoops questions in the chat. We will get to them later in the show. Let's jump into our SEC Media Days talk, though, because, again, 7 days from now, all 16 schools will convene in Dallas, Texas. By the way, hope by next year, producer Matt and I will be able to go. There was some scheduling conflicts this year. I'm not going to be able to attend, but we're getting close. And I just want to do what I deem to be the 5 biggest storylines in the SEC coming into this season, because we are 7 days away from SEC Media Days. In my opinion, this segment's just a little bit of a refresher. Everything you've forgotten over the summer, because incredibly, we are 6 weeks away from week 0, 7 weeks away from that Labor Day weekend. And so college football is coming fast. It's exciting. Let's get into my 5 biggest storylines in college football this year, specifically in the SEC. Number 1, let me start by saying this. You know, it's a crazy offseason in college football. When Alabama is replacing Nick Saban, the greatest to ever do it, in my opinion, and that's not even the number 1 storyline in the SEC going into the season. That is because, as I said a week ago, Texas and Oklahoma, as the clock struck midnight on June 30th, there were celebrations. Pitbull performed in Austin, Texas. And I bring it up because as June 30th turned to July 1st, Texas and Oklahoma are officially members of the SEC. And I'll be honest, listen, I'm not going to do the thing. I think it's become kind of a discourse on social media over the last couple weeks. SEC fans trying to take digs and shots at Texas and Oklahoma. Listen, I think both have a chance to be really good over the course of their time in the SEC. It is going to be a step up in competition, but those are 2 great programs that have historically had a ton of success. And I actually think both have the chance to be really good this year. Let's go ahead and start with Texas, because I think we all believe that Texas is the team that realistically probably is the one that is better suited right now entering the SEC to have immediate success. They are, of course, coming off a Big 12 title, a college football playoff appearance, Steve Sarkisian entering his 4th year. And so let's start right there. Credit to Sark. If you listen to this show, it was a year ago that I was the guy that was like, Sark's never won more than 8, 9 games as a college football head coach in a season. Quinn Ewers coming into last season was not established, 56% completion percentage his first year as a starter. And I kind of just sat there and said, are we sure that Texas is that good? Are we sure they're really ready for the Big 12 last year, but certainly the SEC this year? Well, a year passes, they win the Big 12, and I think they have a chance to do really well really early this season. First off, it's worth noting, really good roster coming back. They did make the college football playoff, but Quinn Ewers is back. The offensive line is as good, frankly, as any in college football coming into the year. And I think while the defense has questions, and there are questions on the offense as well, they lost the entire receiving core. A.D. Mitchell's now with the Indianapolis Colts. Xavier Worthy is now with the Kansas City Chiefs. At the same time, they did well in the portal. They have recruited well, top 5 recruiting class last year. And I believe they are very well built for the SEC. More important than that, listen, as we go forward in this SEC Big Ten world, I am convinced that we are going to start talking about schedules in college football the way we do in the NFL. I was saying this on Fox Sports Radio over the last couple weeks. You know how every year in the NFL, you have a team that goes from worst to first? Last year was the Houston Texans. It was whatever. Well, in the NFL, you have teams that, yes, they improve through the draft or through free agency or hire a new head coach. But part of the reason we see every single year teams go from last to first is because in the NFL, last place teams play last place schedules. And so I bring it up because from Texas's perspective, they got about as manageable of a schedule as you possibly could coming into the SEC this year. Now, it won't be easy. They do play Michigan in the out of conference, and they do play Georgia at home. So I know you're probably sitting there saying, how is it possible that we're talking about Texas as having an easy schedule? First off, they only have 3 SEC road games this year. They play Oklahoma in Dallas. That counts as a road game. So now they only have 3 road games this season. The road games are at Vandy, at Arkansas, at Texas A&M. Now, I know that Arkansas is a very tough place to play. The last time that Texas played there, they got run out of the building. I think it was Sark's first or second year, whatever it was. First year, I think it was. But at the same time, by SEC schedules, at Arkansas, at Vandy, at A&M is about as easy as you can possibly get. Also worth noting, at home they get Georgia, toughest game on the schedule by a mile, at least in SEC play. And in this new era of the SEC, it's also who do you avoid in any given season? Well, this year, they don't play Alabama. They don't play Ole Miss, which is really good. They don't play Tennessee, which is really good. They don't play LSU, which is really good. They don't play Missouri, which is really good. I mean, those are right there. Like 5 or 6 top 10, top 15 teams. Texas avoids all of them. So on the one hand, you have Texas. Experienced, well-coached. Now, I will say, we'll see if the week-to-week grind in the SEC, if they get tripped up here or there. And we'll see Quinn Ewers has to stay healthy. 2 years in a row, he's suffered an injury. Hasn't had to miss extended time, but hopefully there's not an issue there. Oklahoma, to me, is kind of the opposite. Feels like they're kind of coming in under the radar. I will give Oklahoma fans credit because, in my opinion, I think they're coming in with an understanding that it's a process. Brent Venables is only in year 3, and it's easy to forget. You know, Oklahoma actually won 10 games last year. Oklahoma went 10-3 a year ago. They actually beat Texas. Everybody forgets that part. Red River Shootout, Dylan Gabriel, they beat Texas. But with Oklahoma, there are a couple things working against them. One, they are actually a very young team. Dylan Gabriel transfers. It's because they wanted to get Jackson Arnold, the 5-star freshman a year ago, into that starting spot. Well, he's coming in. Oklahoma has to replace its entire offensive line. The defense improved last year, but improved is, of course, a relative term because they statistically had one of the worst defenses in college football 2 years ago. So I think Venables figures it out. Coming off a 10-win year, but first-year quarterback, entirely new offensive line. Let me just ask you a question. Have you seen the Oklahoma schedule for next year? It is insane. Listen, everybody talks about Florida having the toughest schedule in the country, and they might. They play Miami, UCF, and Florida State out of conference. Oklahoma's schedule is absolutely insane, though, okay? This is just, let me just read you the last 5 games of Oklahoma's season. At Ole Miss, Maine. Okay, Maine's not very good. Not part of the Southeastern Conference. At Ole Miss, Maine. At Missouri, Bama. At LSU. So the last 3 weeks, at Missouri, Bama, at LSU. Also Ole Miss. And then how about this 3-game stretch in the middle of the season? SEC opener at home against Tennessee. That's obviously a huge game. Josh Heupel returning to Norman. Josh Heupel led them to a national championship. Then, after that emotional game, but before your rivalry game with Texas, you got to go to Auburn, which is a really tough place to play. So Oklahoma, in my opinion, could be a very good team, but that schedule is just insane. We'll do some over-under stuff as the season goes on. But as you can see on the ticker, producer Matt has brought up all of the over-under win totals in alphabetical order. Oklahoma's win total is 7.5 wins, and it's because of that insane schedule. That was a long number 1, so let's get to number 2 in terms of what I believe to be the most interesting storylines in the SEC. We are a week away from SEC Media Days. That's what I just said earlier. It is for the first time since 2006. Alabama's got itself a new football coach, okay? And we all know where we were and what we were doing when Nick Saban announced he was going to retire. And there was certainly a few days of trepidation for Alabama fans. But I'll also say, I think in reality, Alabama did about as well as they could by hiring Kalen Deboer. So Kalen Deboer comes in. And in my opinion, I think there's kind of a big picture and a small picture way of looking at things. And I want to talk about both, but let's start with the big picture. Big picture is, what did I just say? I think they did about as well as they could. Remember, the day that Nick Saban retired, who were the guys that most people linked to the job? Steve Sarkisian, Dan Lanning. Why is that important? Well, Kalen Deboer, 5-0 against those two guys combined. Beat Sark twice in the postseason, including last year's college football playoff, and beat Dan Lanning 3 times head-to-head. So you have a great X's and O's coach, a great game day coach, a great coach in big games. And now, as we've discussed on this show, Deboer is proving that he can recruit at this SEC level. Everybody said, oh, this guy, will he be able to recruit in the SEC? Well, so far, so good. Because as we've talked about a few times, and we've certainly talked about it on the YouTube channel, Alabama right now has the number 2 recruiting class in the country. Only Ohio State is ranked ahead of them, and Ohio State, they've taken 3 more players, so the average player ranking at Alabama is actually higher and right around 2nd or 3rd best in all of college football. So Kalen Deboer has proven that he can recruit, has proven that he can recruit at the highest level, at least so far, and we'll see if this all holds up before signing day, and he's won big games. That's the big picture. The small picture, which I think is also worth noting, this year, like Oklahoma, is going to be really tough for Alabama, okay? Have you seen Alabama's schedule? Again, these SEC schedules now with Texas and Oklahoma and the elimination of divisions are just bananas. Here's Alabama's schedule, okay? They play at Wisconsin in the out of conference. In conference, here are some of their notable games. At Tennessee, 3rd weekend of October, 3rd Saturday of October. At LSU, it's that year where they play both of them on the road. Oh, and then a week before the Iron Bowl, at Oklahoma. So just in the out of conference, at Wisconsin, at Tennessee, at LSU, at Oklahoma, or excuse me, just on the road, not out of conference. Just on the road. At Wisconsin, at LSU, at Tennessee, at Oklahoma. Those are 4 of the toughest venues in college football to play in. Then at home, you got the likes of Auburn in an always contentious Iron Bowl. You got Missouri, which is probably going to be a top 10 team coming into this year. It's really tough. Good news for Kalen Deboer. Like I said with Oklahoma, it feels to me like Alabama fans kind of understand, hey, this is a process. This is a rebuild. It's going to take time. I know there are 15 other fan bases that are adamant. Alabama stinks. The dynasty's dead, blah, 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 blah. And if Kalen Deboer goes 9-3, they're going to be demanding he be fired. Based on the reactions around Alabama, I have not seen that. I think he's got a little bit of a grace period. Kalen Deboer, the new head coach at Alabama, coming in at number 2. Number 3, most interesting SEC storylines. I got to be honest. This Georgia revenge tour is about to be scary. Okay, so let me say this. I'm the guy, and I'm not, this is sort of a humble brag, but I'm also going to set up what I'm going to say in a minute. A year ago on this show, my preseason national championship pick was Michigan to win the national championship. My preseason pick to win the SEC was Alabama. Both of those things ended up coming true. So it'd be easy for me to just take the victory lap. I'm awesome. I'm incredible, whatever. But I bring it up because while Michigan won the title, while Alabama won the SEC, there was a legitimate argument that Georgia was the best team in the country. Essentially destroyed everybody in the regular season, went 12-0, lost to Alabama. Listen, can't discredit them, but Alabama was the deserved SEC champ. I was happy because I picked Alabama to win that game. I picked Alabama in the preseason. But you look at Georgia, and that was a team that I think was good enough to compete with anybody. They beat Florida State by 60 in the Orange Bowl. And here's the crazy part. They return a lot off that team. And that team, in my opinion, was maybe the most balanced team, probably outside of Michigan, in college football last year. Okay? Think about this. Who are the teams that we always deem to be the best offenses in college football and in this new age SEC? Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin's always good. Sark and Texas are coming in with a great offense. Tennessee, Josh Heupel, right? Those kind of offenses. Georgia actually had a better offense than this Texas offense that everybody loves, than Ole Miss, than Missouri, than Tennessee, than all these great offenses. Georgia actually had a better offense than all of them last year. Number 2 offense in the SEC. The only one that was better was LSU with the Heisman Trophy winner, Jaden Daniels. At the same time, remember last year, Alabama wins the SEC. It's because of that defense that just wore down Tennessee in the second half, wore down LSU in the second half, wore down Georgia in the second half. Statistically, Georgia's defense was better than Alabama's. So they had an offense that was better than Texas's and a defense that was better than Alabama's. You could make the case that they were the best team in college football last year. Michigan, deserved national champion, doesn't change that fact. Bring it up to very simply say that looking ahead to 2024, I think they're coming on a warpath, okay? Carson Beck is back. Carson Beck, by the way, I don't know how many people know this, 3rd most passing yards in college football last year behind only Michael Penix and Bo Nix. Receiving room is elite. Defense will be incredible. Offensive line will be incredible. Trevor Etienne transfers in as a running back from Florida, and they should be really, really, really good. Only thing about Georgia, schedule does get a little bit tougher without divisions. No Vandy, no South Carolina. And the schedule is pretty brutal. At Alabama, at Ole Miss, at Texas. That is an insane schedule. At Alabama, at Ole Miss, at Texas. Tennessee at home. Who else is at home? You got Tennessee at home. You got Florida on a neutral. You got Clemson on a neutral. Good news is they're Georgia, and they're going to find a way to win most of those games. But this could be one of the weird things, and we'll get to it at number 5. But it could be one of those weird things where Georgia, just because of the nature of the schedule, takes a loss or 2, but then goes to the SEC championship game and destroys somebody, or gets into the college football playoff as the 7 seed and destroys somebody. Georgia's the probably going to be the preseason favorite in the SEC. And I don't want to put any spoiler alerts, but I think they probably should be number 1 going into the year. Number 4, SEC storylines to watch. I think to me, it's who's number 4. Most people would agree Georgia and Texas are probably the 2 best teams in the SEC. And I think people would probably give Alabama the benefit of the doubt. But even if you don't give Alabama the benefit of the doubt, what I think is in this 12-team playoff era where there's going to be 5 auto bids and, of course, 7 at-larges, I think you're getting 3 at-larges minimum from the SEC, which means you're probably getting 4 teams from the SEC. So the question becomes, who is that 4th team? Because they're going to get a shot to play for a championship. The teams that I think everybody's excited about going into this year, feels like Ole Miss and Missouri have a lot of buzz this time of year. And frankly, very similar storylines from a year ago. Both finished 11-2. Both kicked the crap out of a Big Ten team in a big bowl game. Ole Miss destroyed Penn State in the Peach Bowl. Missouri, remember, they destroyed Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. That was the sound the alarm situation in Columbus that led to Ryan Day, spending like a sailor coming to port in the NIL and the portal this year because he needed to squat up with his team. So both those teams finish 11-2, both beat a Big Ten team, and both bring back a lot this year. Missouri, obviously, Brady Cook, the starting quarterback, who was really good last year. And then on top of that, Luther Burden, probably the best wide receiver in college football. Defense was good. They do lose their defensive coordinator to LSU, so that's kind of worth noting. And then Ole Miss. Ole Miss is certainly an interesting team as well. Jackson Dart is back. Most of the wide receiving core is back. And obviously Lane Kiffin squatted up in the portal. Number 1 transfer portal class according to 24/7 Sports. Walter Nolan, defensive tackle from Texas A&M. The defensive end from Florida. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, who led the Gators in tackles for loss and sacks last year. Ole Miss is going to be really good. Missouri is going to be really good. And I am curious, does somebody else step up in that 4th spot? Is it LSU, which certainly has a lot of questions? Is it maybe Tennessee with Nico Imamalieva at quarterback now? Or is it somebody else? But I think that 4 spot is going to be the spot to follow because I think we're getting 4 teams in this 12-team college football playoff. Finally, number 5, it really is just a summary of essentially everything that we've talked about because I just think number 5, and this is maybe more of a big picture college football thing, than it is an SEC media days thing or an SEC thing. College football is just going to be so different this year. And I am so curious how everybody handles everything, but just how different even in the SEC things are going to be. Like I said, I think it's easy to forget. Everybody talks about the fact that there are Texas and Oklahoma are in the SEC. But here's the crazy thing. It's not just Texas and Oklahoma are in the SEC. It's that we have now eliminated divisions. And so all of a sudden, there are so many teams that either had the benefit of the doubt in the SEC East or just got squished in the SEC West with an insane schedule. And it is going to be a little bit more of a balancing act. Look at somebody like even Georgia. Georgia, all of a sudden, they don't have two surefire wins against Vandy and South Carolina on the schedule. Now, I know South Carolina's tough. They've lost even in the Kirby Smart year at South Carolina. South Carolina is not very good on paper this year. Kentucky, kind of the opposite. They still get Florida and Georgia and Tennessee, but on the flip side, they now have to go to Texas. They now have to, play a couple other tough SEC games that wouldn't normally be on the schedule. You look at their schedule. They have Auburn on the schedule. They have at Ole Miss on the schedule. Those are games that they wouldn't have drawn. They don't have Mississippi State this year, which has been their historic cross-division rival, and a game that they have had a lot of success in. So I just bring it up because everybody's schedule looks different. By the way, there's the opposite as well. We talked about Ole Miss a minute ago. Ole Miss, by SEC standards, has a pretty manageable schedule. No Alabama on the schedule this year. No Auburn on the schedule this year. Now they do have Georgia. They do have they do have a couple other intriguing games, but by the standard that they've had, it is more manageable than it's been in the past. They get Oklahoma, but it's at home. So I just bring it up. By the way, Texas A&M is maybe the best example yet. No Alabama, no Georgia on the schedule this year. So I just bring it up because to me, I'm so curious how this looks, how schedules play a role, but then how do we judge teams, right? Because we all love college football. You wouldn't be watching this show or listening to this show if you didn't. And what becomes fascinating is we know what was deemed a failure of a season even a year ago. Think about LSU. LSU lost to Florida State on opening night, that first Sunday Memorial Day weekend. Then they lost to Ole Miss, like second or third SEC game of the year, and their season was essentially over. Now their season's not over. Now there's still plenty to play for. Now you can have a third, maybe a fourth loss, depending on how things go. So I just bring it up because I think we're entering a whole new world in college football. I'm not sure how many people fully understand.